Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Madison Board of Selectmen to order on Monday, January 27th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show Selectman Elias is absent. Consent agenda warrants number 29, 11320, 113-2020, number 30, 113-2020, payroll register number 3, 116-2020, and number 4, 123-2020. We have a motion and a second to approve the warrants and the payroll register as read. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Acceptance of the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2019.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of January 13th, 2019.
2019?
I'm sorry, that should be 2020. Correct that. Yeah.
Thank you.
A whole set of meetings, eh?
Wow. Well, let's make sure it doesn't say that on there.
No, it was 2020.
Is it okay? All right, so we're looking at January 13th, 2020. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Old business, Mr. Moody?
None, sir.
Savage? Mr. Duchamp?
None for me.
None for me. Items of communication, Mr. Town Manager?
In lieu of our guest here and for his time, I have no items of communication tonight. Nothing that you don't already know.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open a public hearing to hear about Go Lab's plans at the former Madison paper. And this time, the public hearing is open.
Gentlemen of the board and people from the public, I'd like to offer an introduction to Josh Henry. Josh is the co-founder and president of Go Lab. And this public hearing is really a series of events that Josh has been doing in Madison lately. He met with a group from the Madison Business Alliance, about 40 business owners, a couple of weeks ago. He's been on local cable television on the Now You Know program, and that's been on Channel 11 and also available on YouTube. This meeting tonight is a part of our requirement. The town received a $300,000 grant from the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG. And in that program, it's federal money, so it's required that we post a public hearing to let people ask questions and talk about the purpose of that money. As you know, and most of the public is aware of, the town of Madison incorporated that money into a loan that was given to Go Labs to allow them to start the engineering work that needed to be done in redeveloping the site. So with that said, I'll invite Josh to maybe come forward and talk a little bit about what's been going on at the former Madison paper site.
Sure. Should I just stand here?
That's fine.
So, good evening. I'll tell you a little bit of background about Go Lab, how we came to be. My background is that when this all started, I'm a materials chemist. I was a professor at the University of Maine. I started work with my co-founder, Matt Omalia, who started a design construction business in Belfast around 2008. At that great time for the design construction industry. Building ultra energy efficient buildings. They built the first certified passive house in Maine, which was the 12th in the country at that time. Passive house is a science and engineering based approach to design and construction that results in buildings that consume about 1/10 of the energy of those built to standard code. That was an attractive approach for me on two levels. One, I hate paying my oil bill every year, and so the concept of paying 1/10 of what I was at that time. But the environmental impact as well and the economic impact on Maine. We pay a lot for heating and cooling our buildings in Maine, and all of that money, basically 75% of that money goes out of state. So it seemed like a good approach to building new buildings, retrofitting buildings in Maine. I like the concept. I liked everything about it up until the point that you go and see how it's done on a job site. Before the skin or the siding is on the exterior of buildings, I went to one of the job sites and realized if you're going to reduce energy consumption that much, it requires a huge amount of insulation, especially exterior insulation. So when you build a standard wood frame constructed building, 2x6s, 2x8s, there's only so much insulation that you can put into the cavity of a building. In order to get that level of insulation, you have to go exterior to the OSB or the siding of the house. And there's only a few insulations out there on the insulation market in the US and building products market. 95% of that market is dominated by foam and fiberglass, two materials that to manufacture require a lot of the things that insulation is designed to conserve, energy and fossil fuels. And so I knew my background is actually in semiconductor research and development, the chips that go into your cell phones, into your computers, and really my interest was in renewable energy and solar photovoltaic energy generation. But I liked the concept of doing something with Maine's most abundant natural resource, and the University of Maine has a very good program in advanced structures and composites. So I knew that insulation is not a very complex material. What I like to say is it's not a smart material, it's kind of a dumb material. It only has to do one thing, which is inhibit energy flow from one side of a building to another. And Matt and I became aware of a product that was being produced in Europe, wood fiber insulation. It's actually a suite of products. It's a board that is a direct replacement for pink and blue board insulation that you see that's ubiquitous on building sites. A bat product that's a direct replacement for fiberglass, bats, or mineral wool, and then a blown-in, which is a replacement for blown-in fiberglass or blown-in cellulose. And what we found out about that product was that all of those products were performance competitive with the products that were out there on the market, that it is currently a 600 million euro a year business in Europe, and that no one was manufacturing any of these products in the United States or Canada. And that just set us off basically on an odyssey, a 3-year odyssey in which we applied for grants from the state and federal government to kind of work with the University of Maine to reverse engineer this product, figure out whether the species in Maine could be used to manufacture it here. And at that time, it's sort of been an opportune time for us, a sad time for Madison and people throughout the Kennebec and Penobscot valleys, that the state was looking for other products to manufacture besides paper and the products we currently manufacture, because while you guys have Madison in your area, I was at that time driving to Castine past the Bucksport Mill all the time and seeing what was happening there as well. And so we started to think, two things happened from those studies. We figured out that indeed you could use the forest products, the wood species that we have here, and it's a very good fit for our forest products economy because it's an all softwood product. And it's species agnostic, so it could use hemlock, it could use eastern white pine, it could use spruce, fir, and it could use a mix of those species. So that's a really good fit for our economy because hardwood is really the species that people use a lot in paper making, and we don't have as much hardwood in abundance as we have softwood. And the other thing that was really fortunate for us is that we put together this financial model as a result of these grants, and what we found out was that not only was there not a good reason for it not being manufactured in North America, the economics of manufacturing it in North America are a lot better than the economics of manufacturing it in Europe. We have more abundant and cheaper wood supplies, we have cheaper energy costs than they do in Europe, and the main inputs, it's a very simple product. I don't have a demo here tonight, but it's a very simple product. You're taking in softwood chips, paper quality chips basically, you're refining it, so you're just grinding those chips into a fine fiber, and then combining it with, depending on the product, the bat or the board, combining it with a glue that is then heated through a continuous manufacturing process, a continuous line basically. that cures that glue, and then it can be cut up into bats and boards and packaged just like you would package fiberglass or mineral wool or foam products. And so through that process, we just looked at the economics of it. I actually quit my job 3 years ago, a little bit naively and presumptuously, that we would be able to raise the funding necessary to build a plant. But in the last year, things have really started to accelerate. I would say the last year and a half, we were able to purchase a plant in Germany that was being shut down by one of our, we were working with a company at that time to import some of their board products and use them in our buildings that we were constructing. We were able to buy their mill, deconstruct their manufacturing line, which was only 9 years old at the time. Once we had that, we realized that we had quite an important asset, because there are only probably like 7 of these manufacturing lines in the world. And then we had, you know, if you were to buy that line new, it would cost you probably $35 million. We were able to purchase that for $3 million. And we sort of came to a concept that if we were going to get this started, we had to reduce the capital expense associated with that. And so we had been partnering with dimensional lumber manufacturers in the state of Maine to try and get this done. But we realized that, you know, we thought we would be siting at a sawmill, but when we realized that that cost of building a new facility would be at least $25 million, we started to look around at the sites around Maine, the paper mill sites, Bucksport, Lincoln, Millinocket, East Millinocket, and Madison. And really, the only town in terms of physical assets that had anything to offer us that was a good fit was Madison. And it, you know, Tim has seen the pictures. It's pretty amazing how well we can fit in that process hall, if you've been there. We can fit 2 manufacturing lines almost perfectly within that space. The line is very long, about 2 football fields long, but 2 manufacturing lines doing 6 tons an hour of production fits basically perfectly in that space. And that really makes the economics work of being able to sell this as an investment. And the concept really is that facility at Madison is going to be the sort of opportunity to demonstrate the market in the United States. And if we're successful, that facility will only produce about 7-8% of the Northeast market's demand for insulation, and produce a cost-competitive product with all the products out there. And if you have a cost-competitive product that is environmentally superior, performance superior in a number of ways, then there's really no reason to stop at something that produces 6-7% of the U.S. market. But this is a template for expanding across the country, and potentially $1 billion industry in the United States. And that's the concept that we're selling, and it's gone quite well. In the last year, we've raised about $10 million in a combination of private investment, grants, and low interest community development loans. And within the next 3 to 4, well, the concept also was, once we had put together those assets to attract a large manufacturing partner, a strategic investor, we have found that partner. We're in the process of legally finalizing that agreement. And through that, the concept is basically to raise an additional, well, in total, about $60 million, not just for the build out of the factory, but for, you know, we have to demonstrate a market for this new product in the United States, and that's quite expensive as well, the marketing costs associated with that. So built into that $60 million is not just the investment we're doing in the factory, but running costs for about 3 years, and the cost of marketing and bringing that product to North America. So I tend to talk a lot. I think I'll cut it off right there, and just take whatever questions anyone has.
Josh, can you talk a little bit about the money that Madison has lent
Sure,
and what that's gone towards in engineering and such?
Yeah, so you can't just start. Part of the benefit of coming to Madison, I've said this many times, Tim probably gets tired of hearing this, but, you know, we thought of it initially, we looked at the, you know, the hard assets, the building, the infrastructure, the fact that we got there before the paper machine was removed and we could see the electrical transmission, and we got there basically, you know, I hate to do this because it's like setting up two towns that, you know, are great towns and both need investment, but, you know, if you compare Madison to East Millinocket, for example, because we toured both of them, East Millinocket was just a little further down that road where Madison, I think, was going at the time that we first, you know, came here. And they had just had all of that infrastructure torn out of those buildings, basically, so that it made it almost impossible for us to, basically, you're just looking at that facility and thinking like, okay, well, we might as well, we're gonna have to start from scratch here. Whereas with Madison, not only did we have the assets there, but, you know, as we started to develop our plan, I got the pleasure of meeting Marty Troy, who was the head of electrical instrumentation at UPM for about 30 years. And I sort of sat down at the diner across the river in Anson with him and told him about our plans, and he was like, all right, I'll help you. I was like, okay. But that was the biggest gift that we possibly could have gotten, because you can have a facility, but, you know, do you know all the value that that facility brings? Can you run that facility? And not only were we able to get Marty, who's a huge part of that, and, you know, trained many of the people who worked for Madison Electric Works, who worked for Sappi Paper. So, you know, understanding all the capacity and value that that brings, but then he also, you know, brought to the project Joe Clark, who ran the mechanical operations crew there at UPM for 25 plus years, and then Rick Vino, who was the project manager at UPM. And so through that, we were able to assemble an engineering team that could take the equipment that we had in Germany, all the drawings. We have an architecture department in our associated company that could, you know, put together the CAD drawings so that we could envision this new facility and figure out, really, if you want someone to invest in something, you can tell a really good story, but, you know, that only gets your foot in the door. Once you're there, you have to show them, you know, we're painfully going through this right now, you know, what is this going to cost? And show me for real, so that I don't invest, you know, $10 million and find out that we need 20. And you have to, you know, document that. And any of these towns that is trying to revive their manufacturing infrastructure is going to have to go through that. And part of, very timely, was the ability of, you know, working with Tim, Heather Johnson, and her team was able to put this money in place so that we could look at this facility, hire Stantec, which is a major multinational engineering company based both in Scarborough and Fredericton, New Brunswick, to come and work with us on this plan. And at this point, we have every single drawing that you could possibly imagine put into a digital file. We have a 3D scan of the entire building. We have documented all of the electrical systems. We've documented all of the lighting, piping, high pressure steam systems. We have commissioned Eastern Fire to look through the existing fire protection in that building, which is critical to any manufacturing process. We're in the process of reviving that fire protection within the building. So just about everything you could possibly imagine. We're in the process of getting all the permitting for demoing the specialty chemicals building, for blanking on the, but basically, you know, water treatment on the facility, everything basically that needs to be taken care of with those facilities. A lot of that money, plus, you know, the over $5 million that we've raised in private equity, has gone to figuring that out and really putting together a solid plan for how we can move this forward. And, you know, in the last few weeks, you know, I was quite naive about this, I have to be honest, you know, we just knew that this was, you know, that this was something that a lot of large wood products manufacturing companies were looking at, this technology in Europe and how to import it to the US. We felt Maine was a perfect fit for this because of the the dense northeast insulation market and the demand for insulation in the northeast. But I think all of our guesses and good ideas have been proven true, but the level to which you really need to document all the things that in order to bring that kind of investment, I think you can't imagine when you start just exactly all of the things that you're going to have to do in order to turn an idea into a reality. But I'm happy to announce that we're really very, very close to making that happen, and you'll start to see some changes on the site with the demolition of the specialty chemicals building and actually the boiler building as well to make room for our Greenwood yard. And so, yeah, we're incredibly grateful to the town for everything that they've done to get us started and really move us in a positive direction. And it's been vital, absolutely vital, and I think we've done really good work. Together with the town also, I think we've maintained a good open relationship, really working with all of the stakeholders and really working together to try and bring the state's interest to Madison and investment to Madison.
So are we looking at this spring for specialty minerals? I mean, that's the questions that we get. I mean, I do understand that probably early on things were let out public a little too quick, but that's the questions that we get. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to be pretty conservative about what we tell people because, we've seen what happens kind of with some of the CLT manufacturers who have promised, investment in Millinocket or wherever. I've tried to not commit to saying anything because I don't want to get people's hopes up before they actually start seeing things moving. But if you live in this town, you see a lot more trucks and people parked in the yard by the security building. And you're going to see a lot more of that to come. So in the spring, and maybe a lot sooner than that, you're going to start to see some big, heavy equipment moving in there, especially with the demolition in the
There was
yard.
a gentleman working on the gate the other day, and I was just
Ralph.
so excited.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think
you see cars, but you never really see anybody.
I think the hard thing to know, people want to see the big things happening, but there really are big, very, very expensive things happening already. The fire protection, the fire protection in that building is a huge asset. If you were to rebuild that, it'd be $3-4 million just in fire protection, and we've invested about $300,000 in just changing out the sprinkler heads in the building just to bring that back online. So, that's not very sexy, but it's an asset to the town, to the state, that whatever happens, there is investment being made in the mill right now that's going on. And, I think we're just incredibly fortunate that there are still people who worked at that mill that still care about that mill, that didn't want to see it take the dive that other facilities have throughout Maine, and we've really benefited from that. So.
What do you project that, how much wood, a cord that you would be using a day bringing into the mill?
Yeah, it's really, I can't reel off someone like Peter Carrier could of exactly how many tons there are in a truck, but a year at full production, which, is probably 5 years, a 3-shift facility like you used to see is probably 5 years off, but at that full production capacity, we project 230,000 green tons, about half of what Madison used to do. And part of it is just that the process that we are implementing is we're taking in wood, taking all the water out of it like they did in paper, but instead of densifying it, we're fluffing it up. So we're really taking that wood and making it into a light, fluffy, insulation product instead of a dense paper product. So our challenge actually is we're bringing in 230,000 green tons of wood and using that a year. You're going to see, eventually a huge number of trucks leaving there, because we're producing such volumes with that 6 tons an hour per production line. And there's actually 3 production lines. There's 2 continuous manufacturing lines that will be producing board and bat, and then there's a loose fill insulation that is like loose fill cellulose, so will be baled into like a shrink wrap package that you can buy at the lumber store.
Are you gonna bring in chips, or are you gonna chip it on site?
We will initially be bringing in chips, so we've been working with, we've been talking with all of the, there's just so many resources around here to be buying chips. You have Stratton Lumber right up the road, you have the carriers, are dominant throughout Maine in distributing chips. We've been talking to all the large landowners, they all have an interest in the revival of the mill, and of course they have an interest in selling us stuff. So, we've not had a problem in terms of locating people who are interested in doing contracts with us to buy that quantity of wood.
When you're up and running, what do you see for a figure of employment?
So, the last thing I saw was probably just short of 120 people at full production. And I don't, off the top of my head, I can't reel off exactly how that ramps up, but in the early years, you don't reach quite as high efficiency as you do in the later years, so it's really probably more than half of those people will be hired almost off the bat. Really, once we're into our first year of production, I mean, it's everyone, it's support, it's sales, marketing, it's not just production, and we'll be located in that, assuming that we come to terms with Eagle Creek, because they still own the security and the office building, but there'll be people located in the mill, there'll be people located in that office building next to the river.
From a distribution standpoint, do you have buyers currently interested in bringing your product into?
Yeah, so the product actually, despite the challenge, so one of the reasons we focused on manufacturing this product, even though it's produced in Europe, is it's not a product that transports very well. So insulation is a low density, low value product really. So what I always say is the board product, which is the easiest to ship, if you were to fill a shipping container with the board product, you'd get about $5,000 in a container. If you ship that over from Germany, it costs you about $5,000 per container. So it's not a very good proposition for importing, which is great for the US and it's great for Maine because transportation is the #1 cost associated with bringing that to market. I say it's great for Maine because we're close, Canada is always manufacturing something and looking down to sell to us. Well, those extra, 40, 50, 60 miles before you could have a mill in Canada, gets us that much closer to market and is a real advantage for us. Madison's proximity to 95 is definitely an asset for us. The low cost power distribution and the ability to do a direct contract with Eagle Creek is really important to us. But distribution is kind of like all of those building products. It's a real boots on the ground effort, working with our distributors through retail lumber stores. We imagine that probably our biggest asset is going to be, or our biggest job in front of us is really working with, there's over 400 sort of, I would say, family-owned sort of Hammond, Hancock, Viking lumber type stores throughout New England. And that's the distribution network that we'll probably start out pushing our product through. Because they have a tight connection with the lumber industry. And those distribution channels are already established and they've shown a really high interest in this particular product.
Now what about contractors? So like, there's blown insulation guys all over the place that work in high volume and things like that. Would they be able to buy direct from you or would they have to get it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we're not trying to alienate our distributors that are signing up to carry the product, and so it's a bit of a challenge between how we distribute that. If you sell directly to the contractors that are doing that, then the people who have been invested in like Hancock Lumber, for example, if they invest a bunch in trying to educate their consumer about how to use the product, and then we go and sell it directly to them, there's nothing in it for them. So, we're trying to work our partnerships to get it to market. But the good thing about this product is, and one of the real things that attracted us, is that we feel very confident based on our financial model that we can offer this product at a cost competitive price to other installations on the market, even working through distribution channels. So, we're hopeful that this is the kind of product that eventually you'll be able to pick up anywhere. If you want to use it, if you're a contractor, you work through, you use normal distribution channels. I think for the loose fill and the bat product, it will be, something that you're picking up at your lumber store or working with a distributor that you buy your building products from. For the board product, which is a little more specialized and requires a bit of more of an education, that's something I could imagine we do more direct sales on. But in order for us to be successful also, we have to move a huge amount of volume of this product, and so that's where distributors really are helpful.
So Josh, you have purchased the equipment, and kind of give us an idea where it is and when it will be actually here in Madison.
Sure. So there are two lines that are actually in the process of being moved to Madison. So there's a board line and a bat line. We initially purchased the board line from one of our partners in Europe. We've disassembled that, completed the whole disassembly. It's now packaged and marked and sitting in the port of Bremen in Germany. And basically, timing-wise, as far as the project goes, we look to be sending that once the roads can handle it. We're sending it from Bremen to Searsport, and then from Searsport trucking it up container by container. It's not just containers, also it's huge, what they call break bulk packages. These, the press itself for the board line is 24,000 tons, so it's gonna, 24 tons, not 24,000 tons, 24 tons. So that's, one flatbed basically moving that hook and, gently from Searsport to Madison. So it's gonna be a process, kind of like taking the paper machine out was a process. It's gonna be a process to get it back in. So we anticipate shipping in June-ish, I think, is what we have right now. And then you'll start seeing trucks within the process of, I hope, 2 or 3 weeks, moving all of that equipment from Searsport to Madison.
Any other questions? So, I guess I'll have one more. So, we start the movement, we see that in July.
Well, shipping out of
July or
Germany
August?
in June or July, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it'll take about 6 weeks to get across the ocean. So more in like September, October, you'll start to see
We
stuff.
should see.
But by
should start
then,
to see some
you'll
work there.
have already seen like significant structural works going. I mean, we have to lay all the foundations for all the other equipment that has to go in there. By winter, we have to have a boiler in the building for it to be heated, for us to have steam. There's a number of other pieces of equipment, the refiner, the dryer, which is gonna be on the outside of the building for drying the fiber. Big equipment, big cyclones for moving fiber around. So there'll be significant steel and foundation works going on.
Is that a company like Chimbro, or is that?
Right, yeah. We don't know that it will be Chinbro, but we'll have a contract by, I think we're supposed to have finalized our contracts by June to have a maximum price to finalize the financing by early summer.
If there's no other questions, Josh, thank you very much. Anything
Thank you,
else,
guys.
Tim?
No, that's good.
It was certainly exciting, and we look forward to a long
So do we.
time being.
So do I. Well, I hope that was okay.
Yes, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
All right, at this point, I'll close the public hearing at 7:03. And we'll continue on with Number 2, discuss municipal budget timeline.
So in your packets, you should have the timeline for the fiscal year 2021. We've already started the
Thank you.
process.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Is it okay if I go? I have two
Please do.
daughters under 2 years old.
Please.
My wife is eager to have me home, but, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the budget process has started, the department heads have started to meet with the finance office and kind of put together their draft budgets. So in February, they will start talking with me, kind of putting together an overall draft budget. I'll talk with the county and the sheriff's office about the policing budget for the coming fiscal year, and we'll start talking about capital and any purchases that, as far as road surface management, equipment, repairs to buildings, that sort of thing. So the goal is by Monday, the 24th of February, to have a meeting where the board normally has their meeting. We'll invite members of the advisory committee to come, we'll invite department heads to come, and that'll be really the first time the board gets to see the draft of the municipal budget, get an idea of where we're heading. Any questions on the timeline there? One of the things I noted when I was looking at the meeting schedule, that February 24th meeting is tentatively scheduled to be in East Madison. And I want to know what the,
I think we
favor of
should,
the
I think we
board.
should have it here.
Okay, so I can move that and make it another night in East Madison,
Yep.
and have that budget meeting here, everybody's used to familiarity of this place here. That's true, you'll have more room here. Okay.
All right, does that sound good to everybody? The only date that isn't a meeting that we have to be at is April 1st.
Well, the April 1st is a Wednesday, that's the typical joint meeting with the selectmen
Right.
and the budget advisory committee, so
I'm
that's.
just saying, that's the only day that isn't a Monday.
Right.
We have to do that.
Yeah, those dates below it, May 28th and June 1st, those are inter-office dates where Kathy and I have to have everything ready for town meeting. And right now, we're tentatively scheduling town meeting, the second Monday in June would be the June 8th, 2020.
All right, thank you very much. Selectmen's concerns, Mr. Moody?
None, sir.
Mr. Savage? Michelle? None for me. Citizens' concerns? Seeing none, looking for a motion for an executive session to discuss personnel matter pursuant to 1 MRS 4056A, the town manager performance review. Motion a second for an executive session. Very enthusiastically. We are in executive session at 7:05.